Hi, everyone. This is Paul Casey, the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame educational video series. And we talk about Kenpo. We talk about principles of motion, concepts, techniques, forms, basics, and sometimes we have special guests. Right now, I am very honored and privileged to be introducing the 2022 Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame nominees. And it's exciting to see these new entries into the Hall of Fame as they are chosen by their peers. And that's based upon their competition, their educational value, and their contributions to Kenpo. Today, I'm very excited to introduce a gentleman from Ireland. And Master Shay McNamee is one of the finest out of the great country of Ireland. My family roots are from Ireland, and it's truly an honor to bring him on here. So would you please give a warm welcome. Shay, welcome to the show. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well.
And it's okay if I call you Shay, correct?
Yeah, by all means, yeah.
Very good. Yeah, it's exciting that you're part of the 2022 Kenpo Karate Hall of Fames, and we're looking forward to seeing you in June. It will be an exciting event, and I know that you'll be bringing such a great element to America, and especially to this event. As we both know, Mr. Parker loved Ireland, and Ireland loved Mr. Edmund K. Parker, no doubt in my mind. How are your thoughts about Kenpo? How did you get involved with Kenpo? Tell me about that.
Well, at quite a young age, when I was about 12, 14, I was involved in a bit of boxing. And my brother was serving his time to be an electrician. And he came home one day and he said, there was a lad in the class, and he was beating his hand up with a hammer. He said he was doing this kung fu sport called karate. And I thought to myself, well, I'm quite small, quite light, and maybe I'd like to try something else, because at this time there was no commercial karate schools in Dublin. As a matter of fact, I think I could quite honestly say there was no commercial karate schools, well, Kenpo schools in Dublin and Europe.
And so tell us about the first time you went into the school, or how were you introduced to that school?
When I went down to the school to inquire about enrolling, Mr. Conway was teaching the class. Mr. Conway Senior, yeah. So as I went in, I was standing in the doorway, and it was quite a small room. It was quite packed. So, you know, you couldn't afford to make a mistake or somebody would walk all over you. So I watched the class and I was very impressed. So after the class was finished, I talked to Mr. Conway Senior and I asked about the classes, and he told me that there was an enrollment of 6 weeks. So you had to do a 6-week course. So I done the 6-week course, and which I quite enjoyed it. But with the domestic problems, I had to leave it for a few years, where I came back to it then when I was 20. And I've been studying and training in Kenpo since I was 20, and I'm 73 now. So I think if you do the maths, that makes it 53 years studying and training, yeah?
God bless you. Can't hold a good Irishman down.
Thank you.
So tell us about those first lessons with Mr. Conway and how that progressed for you.
In the early stages of training and the way the classes worked, there was no such thing as private classes. So it was all group classes. So you just had to be able to follow what was happening on the floor, even though you were in a class with brown belts. And because there was no black belts at that stage, only Mr. Conway and the 4 black belts that came out of Upper Fitzwilliam Street is where the headquarters of the Kenpo started in Dublin, yeah?
Is that school still there today?
No, it's long gone. But okay. If you couldn't keep up with the class, you were just left behind. So you learned quick or you dropped out. So I learned quick.
What were some of the most memorable memories you have of training there?
Oh, geez, there's quite a lot. I remember that when Mr. Conway in 1974, he brought Mr. Parker over, and he brought Tom Kelly, big Tom Kelly, and he brought George Quinones, and he had all them down in the school, and that had to be a treasure of all memories.
What was your first impressions of Ed Parker?
Totally blown away, yeah, totally mesmerized by the man. He was, as they quote him in the books, a magician of motion, unbelievable man.
Did you ever have any personal training with him?
Yeah, when I used to go back and forward to the States, Mr. Conway used to bring me down to his house, and while Mr. Conway was having some classes, he also incorporated me with the class. So that was most enjoyable, yeah. And then he brought us over to Pasadena, where Frank was teaching. So we were able to get on the floor there with Frank as well.
Yes, Frank in Pasadena. That we used to call that Pasadena style.
Right.
Who were some of the teachers that you worked with then, besides Mr. Conway, or was it always Mr. Conway?
When I joined the school originally, it was always predominantly Mr. Conway Senior.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then when Mr. Conway left to take up residency in the States, he left an understudy, another black belt. The four original black belts from Ireland came out of Fitzwilliam Street, and they were John Conway, because he was the senior, Tommy Jordan, Morris Mann, and Jim Royce. So the understudy to Mr. Conway was Jim Royce. So if I wasn't getting classes off, I predominantly got my classes off Jim Royce. Yeah.
When you were training there, was there a distinction between Irish Kenpo and American Kenpo, even though the collective, material was Ed Parker Kenpo? Does that make sense? I hope that question. Is there a difference between Irish Kenpo and Ed Parker's American Kenpo?
Well, Paul, when I joined the Kenpo back then, we were doing, I think it was predominantly what Professor Chow taught to Mr. Conway. John McSweeney came over here, Irish descent. He came over here to do a degree in Trinity College. And the rumor has it that he ran short of a couple of books, and to get himself by, he started teaching Kenpo karate. Now, I think he had different kinds of styles rolled into what he was teaching here in Ireland, but it was predominantly from the Chow area. And then as Mr. Conway was coming back and forward from the States, when Mr. Parker was making the transition from Ed Parker's American Kenpo from the old Chow system, then we automatically went the Ed Parker road and followed suit with the modern Kenpo system like you do yourself.
Did you have a lot of, I know that they probably went over things like the basics, self-defense and freestyling. Did you compete much in tournaments, or was there a big tournament scene in Ireland during the time of when you were involved with Ed Parker Kenpo?
No, not in Dublin. There wasn't a big thing for competition karate, because they more or less concentrated on the art as it was, as they say, without the gloves and the pads. It was more just these little hand wraps that they used to spar with. So when there was competitions in Dublin, they were kind of a bloody event, yeah.
Really? I bet. Did you ever take part in that?
I took part of it myself and my brother. Yeah, we took part in a few tournaments. Yeah.
Beautiful. What is probably the most important thing that you can say influenced you during your training during this period with John Conway and Ed Parker?
Well, meeting Mr. Parker, you couldn't go back. Once you've seen the system done as it was done, And I think overall, like as a means to bringing the system to people, because in the old days there was no names on techniques. There was no. They only had a handful of forms. So you're saying, show me something against a punch, show me something against a kick, show me something against a takedown. Where you have a syllabus now that's set out. So when you actually start off your training, you know the direction you're going and you know the finished product.
Did you have, when you were learning Ed Parker system, did you come up through the 32 technique system or 24 or?
Yeah, when we started, we came up to the 32 techniques.
God bless you, because that's what I grew up on. So I don't want to hear anybody complaining about this too much material. Oh my gosh. Okay. Can you recall your last conversations with Mr. Conway Sr. and then your last conversations with Mr. Parker?
Well, I think recalling the last conversation I had with Mr. Conway Sr., we were at his funeral and we were all just kind of very brokenhearted and very saddened. Boy, I'm very shocked, because who would have ever thought, like, a man so fit would die so soon, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that was Mr. Conway Sr. That was the last conversation I had with Mr. Conway Sr.
Do you remember the greatest lesson Mr. Parker ever taught you?
Oh, geez, there's been so many. Yeah.
Pick 2 or 3 then.
Flashing mace.
Yes, sir.
He was telling myself and Mr. Conway how this was born. And he done this demonstration actually in Greece later on, and which we were, that was his last European tour, which none of us knew was going to be his last tour. So he had me, the way he always had his blackboard out to break down stuff. So he was telling us about this. Ed Parker, he was talking to this lady. Of course, he had his hand on the wall, and the young lady, which was me, standing by the blackboard. And of course, Mr. Parker, as a young man, he's doing great stuff with the young lady. But little did he know that the woman's boyfriend was coming across, and he didn't see him. So at the last minute, as the boyfriend's throwing a dig at him, he redirected it, stepped out of the way, hit hard and hit him, and kept going. So that was I think that would have to be the funniest lesson that I remember with Mr. Parker, and the most memorable.
He had a great way of weaving reality and a teaching lesson with humor. Always there was just a little hint of humor, like a little pinch of salt or sugar, just enough to make it so you go, wow, that's good. That it stayed with you. I can't tell you how many times lessons with Mr. Parker weren't always on a mat. For me, a lot of times it would be him talking about something in the school, in his office, or conveying something at the house or in a car. Thank God there's not that many times in the car the way he drove. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. It was there was always something pleasant there, and especially the best lessons were when you were invited to have a meal with him. Let's go eat. And it was wonderful because breaking bread with Ed Parker was a chance to really sit there, and he would ask you the questions to probe a response so he could keep in touch with students. He really wanted to know the feedback rather than him just saying things. Am I right?
Oh, yeah, and he was always trying to feed in. That's where I think he came up with the idea that you had to do a thesis for your black belt. Then all the different people and what they worked at, he was able to feed off that. And always looking for more, you know, answers. So he was great in that way, and he, you know, he'd listen and he'd be full attention. Yeah.
Think of the greatness of his influence some 31 years after his passing. How many people have been touched? How many people have been introduced to the mindset of Ed Parker? He really elevated the martial arts world to the thinking man's world. And you're a great example of it. All these years later, 53 years later, you're still teaching people, you're still asking questions, you're still refining it. It is so good about that. So now you work with the IKF. Why don't you give us some background on it and just elaborate on that for me? Tell us a little bit more about the organization. Okay. Tell us about your patch that you have on your chest there, where it says the International Karate Federation. I believe that's what that says.
As like Mr. Parker's patch, we have the dragon and the tiger, and it's encompassing the world, that we embrace the world, and we want to take anybody into the family that is prepared to come in, yeah, and work to the rules of the IKF. Well, how the organization was founded or born, yeah, was after Mr. Parker died, Mr. Conway and the committee, Mr. Conway felt that he was kind of left aside. So he wasn't asked any advice or invited in to take any part on the committee after Mr. Parker died. Now, I believe at that time there was only seven degrees officially in the world. So that's how the IKF was formed. Mr. Conway would never have left the IKKA if Mr. Parker was still around.
And can you, right now, currently, the IKF, is its home base or headquarters in Ireland?
The European headquarters is in Ireland, yeah.
Okay.
And the international headquarters is in California under GM John Conway, yeah.
I see. And you guys collaborate. Do you pursue the Ed Parker syllabus, or do you expand it on that, or how similar is it? Is it still similar to the IKKA, or has it gone off on its own direction?
No, it's still very much the same type of techniques, the same forms, everything. Yeah.
I see. What is your vision for the IKF in Europe?
In Europe, well, my vision for the IKF in Europe would be to expand slowly and expand our schools, not too much that we can't, you know, have enough time to teach, because we don't really have a lot of instructors, but to keep it solid, you know, keep it what Ed Parker taught us and not water it down, and try and cover all our bets in the art.
Will you expand outside of Ireland, or are you outside of Ireland?
We have an instructor in Spain. We have an 8th degree black belt in Greece, in Athens.
Oh, congratulations! That's
Yeah,
great. Hopefully these people from Spain and Greece can come out to the Hall of Fame someday, and you know, it'll be a wonderful chance for them to meet their counterparts.
Well, do you know what, Paul? Unfortunately, when we were over in Greece, and unknown to Ed Parker, it was going to be his last trip there, but Mr. Nikolai, who was the chief instructor for Greece, he actually invited Mr. Parker to come to Greece and do a seminar for the Hellenic Air Force. And unfortunately, with Mr. Parker's passing, Mr. Nikolai, I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and because Mr. Parker passed away, Mr. Nikolai asked me to go there, and which was a great honor. And I went over there. We done a week's training with the whole Air Force, and then we done a grading at the end of that. And I believe that we run the first official IKKA championships in Athens.
Wow! Congratulations again.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So we got a double whammy on that, and it was a great week, very productive. Done a lot of gradings, and please God, we go forward and get stronger in Greece. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you were asking me about some great memories I had. One was in 1988, and I think there's about 30 of us went out from Ireland, because we used to go out from time to time to compete in Long Beach, and we actually got a second place in the World Championships. And the person that done us the favour was one of Mr. Parker's brown belts, who was a kickboxer, so he couldn't control himself. So they got the team disqualified, and our team went through to get second place in the World Championships.
Wow. Wow. Well,
So
I got to say, yeah, you know what? There are so many stories that we could be talking for days here, sir.
Yeah,
honestly, it just one stimulus another response. I go, oh yeah, I remember this and that. And my fondest memories were the personal stories of having one-on-one time with the people that I knew and grew to respect, and some of them I actually love very dearly. And it's a very special brotherhood to be a part of Ed Parker's family.
I'd like to finish on this note, though. As I said to you earlier on in the interview, that Ireland was the base for the European Kenpo. Yeah, so it actually started. Mr. McSweeney brought it over from America. It hadn't been heard of in Europe. Then it jumped from Ireland to Europe. Yeah, so I think that was, I'd like to, finish on this note by saying Mr. Conway Sr. has a lot to be responsible for, because it was through him taking it forward, under the guidance of Mr. Parker, because he loved Mr. Parker. And, I hate to hear anybody address Mr. Parker as Parker, because then they never either never met him or never respected the man. Because how could you speak like that of a man? Fantastic, yeah.
Well, because of Ed Parker, I got to meet Frank Trejo. Because of Frank, before I met Trejo, then I met every other senior black belt and have a first name. I got to know John Conway Sr. I had great respect for Mr. Conway. He was always very kind to me, very supportive. And when you have a conversation, next time you talk to John Jr., ask him about his father. He spoke. John is, like I said, I've known John for a long time. I think it's 1981 we tested. So we're coming, it's 40, what is it? 41 years now? 41 years I've known John Jr. All right. And like I said, you are one of our newest nominees for the 2022. It is truly an honor to talk to you. And on behalf of the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame, congratulations, Master McNamee. I really mean that. Congratulations, sir, on all your success. And we do look forward to seeing you here in Las Vegas, Nevada.
And I'm looking forward to seeing you and meeting all the other nominees, yeah?
God bless you. Have a great day, all right? Take care.
Likewise. Right, God bless, brother. Bye-bye.
Salute.